Greetings, greetings. Hello, how are you? This is KIN234, and this is a presentation regarding the basic drivers of a person. And this is not intended to be, for example, an entire psychology course. That is not what this is about. This is more about you kind of understanding when you're sitting across a table from your client, you're working with them one-on-one, what is it that makes them tick? What are the things that really brought them to the table? And usually it's not as apparent as just the initial conversation. There's usually more to it than that. Now, when you look at the main drivers, you have three of them. And it's hard to disassociate one from the other. They're very much intertwined with one another. And really, when it comes down to it, the emotional and psychological really affect behavioral. But what you find is there's usually a combination of these three involved in the process. And I've said it before in another presentation, to make physiological change, there has to be behavioral change. And usually to have some type of behavioral change, there has to be an understanding of the personality driver, the behavioral drivers, and the emotional drivers that make that person tick. And there's much that goes into this. It's very complex. Psychologists make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, finding out what people tick. But I have to tell you that in our role as a trainer, as a movement practitioner, you really have some scope of practice issues here where you have to really kind of limit yourself on how far you go, because we are not psychologists. Perhaps some will be, but not all of us. So you look at this and you look at the behavioral changes. We already talked a little bit about the drivers up top, but the behavioral changes, many times it just takes a restructuring of the reward system. People have been conditioned over their lives to be rewarded for certain behaviors, and hard work, dedication, focusing on family, focusing on things outside of themselves are sometimes the key drivers. And to have somebody take and repurpose themselves to where they're focusing their time and energy on themselves will feel awkward, feel selfish. And really, in actuality, it's the furthest thing from selfish. They're helping themselves become better, more physically fit, more healthy and well, and that allows them to be a better person in their family environment or in their work environment. So really, there's a little bit of programming that has to go here sometimes for people to kind of understand that, hey, if you're doing this for yourself, you're actually doing it for others as well. It's the behavioral change that really happens as a result of understanding the drivers from up above, the personality and the other behavioral drivers that have been experienced over one's entire life. I mean, you might be sitting across the table from somebody who is 50 years old and they've had a very major life incident. And so as a result, you're looking to reprogram these people and reprogram their 50 years of behavior. So as you best understand or get better at understanding the two chevrons above, then you get better at being able to leverage your person and redirect them in and towards their physical goals. Believe me, there's a little bit of art, there's a little bit of science, there's a little bit of psychology involved, I have to admit. But it takes a little bit of work and practice to work with the people to know how to lever them just right and hit them just right in the right buttons to be able to get the response you want. As I mentioned earlier, you have these main drivers, emotional, personality, and behavioral. And if we look at these on the emotional side, when you look at it, clients will come in and say they want to lose weight, they want to get in shape, they want to feel better. Very nebulous, like we've talked about before. These are very nebulous terms. A person comes in, they really don't have an understanding of what that looks like or what that is. And when I sit across from people, I'll literally ask them, well, okay, you've mentioned you want to feel better. Tell me, what does that look like? What is that to you? When you talk about lose weight, can we get some SMART goals involved here and talk about something that's very specific, measurable, and actionable? And when you start to go down that path with people and you really force them, sometimes it's uncomfortable for them to really own up to why they're actually sitting across the table from you. And that path usually takes people down one of two main courses, one of which is the gal down here, she's running away from something, or this gentleman's running towards something. And so as you take a person down that path, you start to talk with them a little bit more about, like, okay, fine, you want to be in shape. What do you mean be in shape? Well, quite frankly, I had a bad medical report from my doctor, and We have a health history of heart condition in my family, and my father died when he was 49 years old. I was very young when my father passed away. Not me personally, I'm just role playing here. And as a result, um, I have to admit, I'm kind of worried that I'm not going to be there for my daughter. That's the driver. That's somebody running away from a bad medical report and bad health history. And you'll have people come in and say, well, I love coaching soccer with my kids, but I can't run up and down the soccer field with them anymore. Again, that's something where they are having a negative response because of their poor fitness condition. And they're trying to basically better themselves to run away from that situation. Running towards, as I always like to categorize, a wedding dress, destination vacation. I've made it that, I'm 50 years old and gosh darn it, I'm going to run a 5K this year. Those are goals. Those are very actionable goals that people have. And these are very, very easy for people to see and visualize. These are more difficult. So when you have somebody who's running from something versus somebody who's running towards something, uh, it changes the goal structure and how you have to present things to your clients, because usually these folks over here have difficulty really seeing and conceptualizing what they are, what their end game is. Whereas these folks over here, they have an end game. It's about the process. And these are the kind of the underlying things, right? I want to look good for my husband, my wedding dress. When we go on vacation, I don't want to be the guy on the beach that has to wear a tank top. We have poor health history family. These are very strong emotional drivers that are deeply rooted in people. And many times it's kind of like a fear driver, and that emotional driver becomes a very powerful tool um, when working with your clients. I'm not saying to browbeat them and continually remind them of why they're there and scare the snot out of them, but that's going to be part of it. So you have these personality types that you're going to come across as well. On one side, passive, kind of type B, they're more process oriented. On the right side, they're very highly engaged. They're involved in the process. Your typical type A kind of personality, and they're very outcome oriented. I lost 5 pounds these last 2 weeks, and whereas in the process oriented, the person's more about like the workout, what they're doing, what the exercise is, where these folks are more about just do it, get it done, and let's get to the end result. So you really don't need to be a therapist here. I mean, it does help. It does help to have an understanding of what you're doing here when you talk with people, so you can kind of navigate through a conversation deftly. But you'll have people who will want to have more of an ample description, a very long-winded description, a strong understanding of what's going on, and they'll enjoy the different challenges that you have within each workout. You'll have other people who will come and say, all right, let's go, let's get it going. I'm ready to go. Come on, today's my day. Let's get fit. Those are your type A people. And I will tell you this, and I will caution you this. You'll have people who will be ultra type A who will come in, and keep in mind, they run a high stress lifestyle with their work, with their family, etc. And then they're coming in to do a workout with you, which is in essence another stressor. So I caution you to be aware of your very ultra high type A personalities. Sometimes you may have to integrate in a little bit of yoga, Pilates, mind body, because they're so wired up that those folks need to have a little bit of downtime. And concerning the value proposition I've talked about in other presentations, that is a value proposition for these people to be able to shut it down. Many times they can't shut it off when they come in. And shutting it off sometimes actually helps them work-wise and life-wise become better, because it quiets their mind a little bit and allows them to focus on other things better. So just realize you're going to have these different personality types. So from a behavioral standpoint, people are super complex, right? And usually the behaviors that we have as adults or young adults, in many of your case, they're rooted in many times childhood memories and issues that had happened at a very young age. I have experience where I worked with a medical group downtown, and I handled the personal training, and my scope of practice was working with those people to help them as best as possible navigate workouts and really reprogram them to what wellness is. So for many of them, they were found that exercise was punitive. They were found that, or it was found that they were met with a coach who told them they'll never play the offensive line unless they put on 50 pounds. You're going to be a loser if you don't do this. The extra weight might have provided some kind of armor against an abusive parent, right? Food can become their drug of choice over time. It's something that gives them comfort when they come home from a hard day's work. I had 2 individuals who were anorexic and bulimic who literally ran themselves into the ER. They ran on a treadmill for 5 hours because they ate a candy bar the night before. They ran themselves into basically an MI, a mild heart attack. And those individuals who are on that anorexic and bulimic side, they have a very strong emotional and psychological driver that almost allows them to kind of disassociate from their own body. And it's a sense of control because it's something they can control in their lives. I can put this into my body and I can force this out of my body. I can eat to be satisfied and then I can then purge myself afterwards. It's a case where these individuals, whether it's on the high BMI or it's the folks who are on the other side who are anorexic and bulimic, these individuals have very strong emotional drivers that have caused a behavioral issue. And for example, the individuals who ran themselves into treadmills or ran themselves into the ER on a treadmill, I literally had to take them through a very regimented, simple workout program that was designed to integrate working out back in a positive environment as opposed to a negative, punitive environment. It was reprogramming that needed to happen because of some behavioral issues that they had. So it's often something that's been buried deep in the person from the past. So when we look at this and we kind of summarize this up, guys, as a personal trainer is not a therapist. And believe me, you will have clients who want to utilize your services as such. They will want to come and vent about family, their relationships, their work, etc. And you may have to keep them on task. And I've seen trainers fall into the trappings of trying to become like the Dr. Phil of personal training. And I'm telling you, it's not within our scope of practice. Be mindful, listen, offer suggestions, and say 4 more reps. That's about the best you can do in that situation. Because people who truly need help and need assistance need to seek a professional. And as soon as you step outside of your own bubble, your own scope of practice, you're exposing yourself to some liability in that regard. So you need to use caution in terms of how you navigate that with your clients. And the information that's provided here, you've had probably psychology courses here at school, and you've probably been exposed to different concepts. Perhaps some of you have a psychology major that you're working on right now. All are great, wonderful tools. And understand that this is yet just another tool in your toolbox to allow you to better navigate and work with your clients and work with them in a one-on-one environment. Your goal is to make a physiological change with your client, and that physiological change will come from a behavioral change. And the behavioral change many times will need to address some type of emotional or psychological change as well. They're all interconnected and you just can't deny that, but just realize your scope of practice. All right, guys, have a great one. Signing off.